Hi there and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about my reactions and sort of review what happened at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view premium live event over the weekend just gone. I'm recording this on Saturday, so it was a week ago today, which has changed a lot of things in a week of the potential effects of the winners and losers of the Royal Rumble, all of its matches anyway. One thing I will start by saying is although there was only 4 matches on the card, it almost didn't feel like it needed any more. I feel like the number of matches was strong enough to fill out the time. I think part of me was worried about the fact there was only 4 matches, that it was going to feel like something was too stretched out, or it was going to feel like we were missing something, but don't feel it was really. I think if Seth was fit and healthy, I think there would have been a World Heavyweight Championship match, but obviously that never happened. So let's start with the match of the night for me, and that was the Women's Royal Rumble. Obviously Bayley was the winner. I'm happy about that. I did say in my Royal Rumble predictions video that Bayley was first, or I might have even said she was second most likely to win the match. I think I predicted Becky Lynch to win, but I think Bayley was the best choice. There was brief damage control issues in the Rumble, which I think were clear. I can't remember exactly what happened, but I believe there was a moment where Bayley went to high five, I think it was Asuka, and then she just ignored her basically. I think the lack of legends in the match, particularly the women's match, out of the 2 Rumble matches, because there weren't really any in either, but particularly in the women's match, I thought that was very impressive, because out of the women's Rumbles that we've had so far, they seem to be quite packed out with legends and surprises more so than the men's matches, partly because of the booking of the women's roster isn't as strong as the men's generally. Therefore, they usually pad it out a bit more with women's. It's a strange one because although it's like nice for the surprise of a return, I feel like you never actually think they're going to win the match, so I think it is good to keep them to a minimum, or in this case there wasn't any, which I think is good because it shows how strong the women's roster is now and how healthy it has been compared to past years. I think the TNA crossover was quite fun. Jordan Grace appearance, which I believe she is the, correct me if I'm wrong, TNA Knockouts champion. I believe that's the right phrase. I obviously don't watch TNA, if you hadn't guessed already. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe she was the one who had the last match with Naomi before she finished there to come back to WWE, which again, great surprise return there with Naomi. Jade Cargill's performance was amazing. For me, one of the best moments of the Rumble. Just the way she so effortlessly lifted up Nia Jax like we've not seen any woman do. I think the big question now is whether she ends up on Raw or SmackDown. On SmackDown last night, she appeared in Nick Aldis's office, but there was no contract signed or anything, so that's yet to be seen. I think the Tiffany Stratton appearance was a breath of fresh air. When it was getting late on in the Rumble, I was starting to think she wasn't going to appear, but with the year she's had, and the fact the Rumble was in Florida, and obviously NXT's Performance Center being in Florida, etc., it felt like Tiffany was nailed on to be in the Rumble as like an NXT surprise. But as we saw last night on SmackDown, she's officially signed to SmackDown now, and she had a match with Michin last night where she won. The last thing I want to sort of mention with the Women's Rumble is the fact that Becky Lynch didn't win, and because I feel like we now need to figure out her path for WrestleMania, because you can't have Becky Lynch not in a program. I believe there will be an Elimination Chamber match which will determine Rhea Ripley's opponent at WrestleMania, and I believe you're probably going to be looking at like some of Raw's women baby faces, like your Zoe Starks, Shayna Baszler, Indy Hartwell, probably because of the Australian thing as well, and obviously others as well, but they're the 3 in my head at the moment. So now moving on to the Fatal 4-Way match, which was for Roman Reigns' Undisputed Championship. I think we all knew that the end result was going to be what it was, which was Roman Reigns retaining the title. I think though it was done well that AJ Styles was the one that took the pin, just because I think having Randy Orton pinned sort of hurts that momentum that he's got since he's come back, and there's rumoured to be a one-on-one match for them down the line somewhere, and with LA Knight, with his popularity, I don't think it would have done him any favours to be pinned by Roman for a second time. I was happy that it wasn't a bloodline interference finish. And by that I mean, although Solo did get involved to stop, I believe it was Randy Orton getting a 3 count on Roman Reigns, that wasn't the end of the match. I'm just happy that there was bloodline interference, but it was done so that that didn't end the match for a change. Randy Orton looked really strong in that match. Not bad at all for a first big PLE match since his return. I did think there was potentially going to be a one-on-one match with them two at Elimination Chamber. There was obviously reports that Roman wasn't going to be working the Elimination Chamber, which I do believe to be true. So next steps for Roman Reigns is obviously moving on to WrestleMania now, and it looks like it's going to be against The Rock, which I'm not that pleased about, but it is what it is. What's next for AJ Styles? I think you could potentially see AJ Styles go into a program with potentially Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits for WrestleMania, or even maybe the OC. It's hard to say with AJ Styles because obviously he's just recently turned heel, so it's like you want to put him against baby faces, which is why I think Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits have just come into our head straight away. So maybe there's a program there for WrestleMania, I'm not sure. It would almost feel like you're missing out massively not having AJ Styles on the WrestleMania card. And lastly, for LA Knight, I think he's got to move on to Logan Paul's United States Championship now. He didn't appear on SmackDown last night. I thought he was going to when Logan Paul opened the show and was talking about that. So unless we're going to see a Logan Paul and Kevin Owens rematch at Elimination Chamber, LA Knight is the one to take the United States Championship off Logan Paul. And I know I'm not the only one who has that opinion. I've heard a few people say that. But I do think that would give LA Knight a big win at WrestleMania too. I just think that would be a good way to reward LA Knight's popularity with a belt. And speaking of the United States Championship, let's move on to the United States Championship match that was at the Royal Rumble. Obviously, I mentioned a rematch, and that would be because, although I did think that was a clever ending, it does seem a bit odd because usually the refs can't see someone interfering or they can't count to 10 properly. So it seems strange that the ref was able to notice brass knuckles on Kevin Owens' hand whilst his head was down, counted to 3. But there you go, that's WWE. Overall, I think it was a decent match. I don't think it was bad by any means. And I think it was probably the filler match of the card, which is saying something because it didn't feel like a filler match. It was a good match to break up between the big titles and the Royal Rumbles. I think Logan Paul was impressive again. He showed that he has dedicated himself to the world of wrestling, which I think a lot of people never expected him to do, me included. I don't know who the guy is, but there's a guy who always appears during Logan's matches. Do you know the one who tries to get in and slide the brass knuckles to him, where the security all bombarded him when he tried to come in? I feel like that's getting a little bit boring now, since it's happened to everyone since his SummerSlam match with Ricochet. I feel like that's getting a bit boring now. One thing I will say is I think I've not actually heard anyone say this so far. It actually took 4 people to actually beat Kevin Owens. With Logan Paul himself, you had the guy who always runs in, and then you had Grayson Waller and Austin Theory come out to distract the ref and obviously give the brass knuckles to Logan Paul. So if you think of it that way, because we would never actually expect Logan Paul to beat Kevin Owens clean in a wrestling match, the fact it took 4 people essentially to beat him says a lot. Moving on to the main event of the night, which is the men's Royal Rumble match. So I've written down, Cody has to finish the story, it's now or never. The reason I say this is because I just feel like with Cody, it almost feels like it has to be this WrestleMania or it's not going to happen. As I said earlier, it feels like plans may have changed in that regard now just because of The Rock getting involved, CM Punk getting injured. It seems like they're going to go for Cody and Seth now, just purely based off of what happened at the end of SmackDown last night. I just feel like his momentum is, if not peaked already, has hit its peak. I could be wrong, but I just think it seems like to me it's got to be now or never. But he has essentially said he's not going to face Roman, which is a huge bummer for me. I've also got written down about CM Punk not winning. Does he face Seth anyway? Well, that's not going to happen now, is it? There was a few of us, me included, who thought we were potentially being worked with the whole CM Punk injury, with Drew McIntyre standing on it, on his arm, on Raw this Monday just gone. But by the looks of it, that's not the case. So now I think you've probably got a situation where Cody is facing Seth and Roman is facing The Rock, which I think if somebody would have told you that was going to happen, you'd be like, nah, I was happy personally with the strong Gunther performance, although not as strong as last year, which you couldn't really top without him winning the match. I thought it was interesting when he had a stare down with Bron Breakker. Obviously, there's been a lot of reports come out over the week that Bron Breakker essentially took Brock Lesnar's spot in the match because he obviously got taken out of it. To add to that, I think Bron Breakker was incredible in the match, and I don't think there was anybody who could have filled a Brock Lesnar spot quite like Bron Breakker did. I think he just made it look so effortless the way he eliminated the likes of Finn Balor, Jimmy Uso, Omos. Like, he was just eliminating people for fun, and it was so good to see someone from NXT get such a strong showing in the Rumble, because obviously Carmelo Hayes was in the Rumble but didn't really do much of anything in there. When I was watching the Rumble, I thought the Pat McAfee spot was a bit strange. That made me think that was the number Brock Lesnar was going to come in. Obviously that seems to have not been the case, but I just thought there was so many better things that could have been done with the Pat McAfee spot instead of that happening. You kind of got the pop of Pat McAfee coming out at the start of the night. I just feel like putting him in the Rumble was so pointless. I feel like it could have been better used there. Speaking similarly to that, I think the slight lack of surprises or big returns or anything was sorely missed in this Rumble. Obviously we got Andrade come back at number 4, which I believe was great. I enjoyed that. Although I wasn't really watching WWE when Andrade was wrestling first time around, but I'm excited to see what he's got nonetheless. I was personally hoping for a Big E return. That would have been cool. I don't know if it's just me that's noticed this, but I think we're probably going to get Drew and Sammy at the Chamber or at WrestleMania potentially. I think that's like a little rivalry that they've had on the side just cooking for a little while now. I know we've already seen it on Raw and stuff, but I think what you could do is you could do a stipulation match, and obviously Drew eliminated Sammy from the Rumble, so that kind of adds fuel to that fire. If it was up to me, I would have Cody go and face Roman and The Rock in a triple threat match, and then have Drew face Seth at WrestleMania because CM Punk is injured, because I think that was the match we all wanted, but looks like we're not going to get that now with the injury. So to close out the video, I think the right winner was picked for both Rumbles. I think with Bayley challenging Io Sky at WrestleMania, which has been made official as of last night on SmackDown, I think we all knew that was where it was going, because Bayley facing Rhea Ripley is almost just not believable. And I also feel like that would have been a big waste of a Royal Rumble win, because we all would have known that Rhea would retain against Bayley. So I'm glad that they've kept Bayley to a SmackDown person. Not just because the story made sense as well, but yeah, the right winner was picked for all 4 matches on the night, in my opinion. Obviously, I think some people would have preferred different winners, although in hindsight, I think it was good that Cody won because of CM Punk's injury. So if CM Punk had won and got injured, it would have been probably the most pointless Royal Rumble win in a long time. It's just a shame that he's not going to face Roman now by the looks of things. I hope they do a swerve on that, fingers crossed, but we'll see. I think we'll potentially see a Logan Paul and Kevin Owens rematch, probably at Elimination Chamber, hopefully. I'm excited to see what happens with Jade Cargill. I think we're probably going to get a Bianca Belair match at WrestleMania, which is cool because although Bianca hinted that she wants a match with Io Sky last night, I think that's not going to happen now because of the Bayley thing. I think we'd potentially get Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill at WrestleMania, which will be a great match in my opinion. We all knew Roman was going to win his match. I'm just glad it happened the way it did, which makes a change for the last few matches that he's had. Thanks for watching the video. Subscribe for some more wrestling content. Want to eventually branch out into gaming content. I said this in my last video. It is true. I want to do that eventually. It's just sort of figuring out the logistics of it and things like that. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.